Hello and welcome to Mamy, zielone pojęcie podcast by Wrocław University of Environmental and Life Sciences. My name is Jowita and today with me I have Professors Joost van Hoof and Jan Kazak, scientists whose work is aimed at older citizens and getting them involved in shaping cities so that they're comfortable and safe for people in their later years. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining the podcast today. And let me just start with some introductions. Professor Joost van Hoof has got extensive experience in fields of aging society and age-friendly cities. He works as a full professor of urban aging at the Hague University of Applied Sciences. His most recent research focuses on age-friendly cities and the design of housing as well as the socio-gerontology. He's the chairperson of the knowledge platform Age-Friendly The Hague, and he has an ongoing collaboration with this university, and especially with the research group led by Professor Kazak here. In the paper published in 2021, entitled Age-Friendly Cities and Communities, State-of-the-Art and Future Perspective, Professor van Hoof highlighted, and I quote, a need for greater collaboration between disciplines in order to create a truly multi-sectoral actions for making our cities age-friendly for all generations. Professor Jan Kazak, on the other hand, who is an alumnus of Wrocław University of Environmental and Life Sciences and the current leader of the research group Sustainable Cities and Regions, has been involved in promoting the idea of age-friendly cities in Poland through collaborations with various organizations, including local authorities, NGOs, and the so-called TBS, the Affordable Housing Association. His research work combines social, environmental, and economic aspects of urban development. He has studied age-friendly solutions in Scotland, Italy, Holland, and Australia. He once said, "I'm particularly interested in what we can do to improve the lives of older citizens. Therefore, I'd like to plan cities in such a way that senior citizens are given the opportunity for independent living." Gentlemen, one more time, welcome.
Thank you very much for inviting us.
Yes, good to have you here. And in fact, before maybe we go on to the actual questions, I think it's worth mentioning that The Hague has become a model for other Dutch cities looking to become age-friendly. Is that correct?
To some extent, yes. But not all cities wish to become officially age-friendly, but they still look at my city for some form of inspiration, whether it's age-friendly public transportation or social services. They all like to come and see what we do in The Hague.
Excellent. So all the better that we've got you here and that there is this collaborations going on. So perhaps, people in Poland can also learn a thing or two from you. But to get us started properly, I really am curious as to what you scientists think about age and, in fact, old age. Everyone says, I'm so old, let's say on their 30th birthday and 40th birthday and then possibly 50th and so on. But actually, are they? What do you think?
Well, there's two things I'd like to say here. You're as old as you feel. And some people may feel like they're old, but it's a matter of perception. And honestly, in the old days, people retired at the age of 50, 60, and now the retirement age is 67, and it's going to be 73 in a couple of years from now, at least in the Netherlands. So what is old age? I simply don't know. I think it's more important not to look at someone's chronological age, which is your passport age, but at the real age, the age that you feel like you belong to. And I think that's way more important, your biological age, so to say.
Right. And what do you think are the attitudes here in Poland?
Well, attitudes is one thing, but coming back to this first question, when this exactly this turning point when you can say that someone is already a member of this society of older adults, and in our research, in fact, we focus mostly on people 65 plus. But there are already some comments that considering that improving quality of life, very often people this early older adults around 65, they don't have these typical syndromes that we may consider typical for older people. That's why this line probably is constantly moving. So that's why it's so difficult to point one turning point to become an old person.
But as you said, it's sort of 65 plus. That is when, I don't know, the textbooks sort of say that this is when someone, let's say, we can say live in their later years, let's say.
Universal cutoff point. Some countries tend to say 60 years of age. But looking at my colleagues at my university, I wouldn't say that they're all old. They are more experienced indeed. So yeah, I like to say you're as old as you feel. And when people are still active and contributing economically to our societies by having a job, I don't think these people are old. We should look at what we call third age versus fourth age. So people who are in need of healthcare and support. That's a different kind of being old than people who are still healthy, active, enjoying their life, going to a museum, having a drink, going to restaurants, just enjoying their life after retirement. It's two different groups, and we often treat them as a homogeneous group, which we actually shouldn't.
I agree.
And as you mentioned, third age, that's a movement quite significant in Poland. We can see many initiatives of universities of the third age. It interacts on many different levels. One thing is, of course, as university, probably the starting point, how we can consider it. It's just another way to educate people, also based on learning new stuff there. Training their brain that helps them keep healthier mentally, but also this aspect of socializing, discovering the world. It's activities of universities of the third age don't happen only inside classrooms. Very often they organize plenty of activities outside, so it's a part of discovering parts of the world that maybe they didn't have a time before.
It's possible. Yes, I think I agree. I think people are so busy in their prime that I guess as long as they're healthy enough to attend those courses, that is probably a very good idea. And as you said, the variety of not only traditional classes, but the variety of activities offered is for sure quite good. And in Holland, are people also so keen to join those third age courses?
It's a less well-known initiative, to be honest. We used to have something we call Volksuniversiteit, like people's universities, which are open to all, not people who are old or older, also people in the 30s and 40s. But that's really a niche that is not really well exploited, I would say, in my country, or well developed.
And Jacek, as far as you know, is Poland unique in this aspect, or are there some other countries where those third age university courses are very popular?
Yeah, it's very popular in Poland. We are not the only country where it's quite popular, but comparing to other countries, I rather notice that in some countries it's less popular. I didn't find cases where there is a huge gap that some countries offer even more via this form of participation.
Let's be proud then. For one thing, Poland has got something nice that we can maybe share with the entire planet. But going back to that subject that, in fact, I know you're both experts at, which is the age-friendly cities. And the whole idea, because I think people may understand everything, actually. What exactly does it mean age-friendly? For one person, it might mean something which is completely opposite for another person who will be guessing, so what are they telling me about this idea? So could I just ask you a little bit about the history of that? So how did the movement, let's say, the network started, and who originated it, please?
So the age-friendly cities movement is a program or agenda that was set by the World Health Organization, and it was officially launched in the year 2007. As an agenda, basically, to stimulate cities to become better places for their older citizens. And I mean, not just for citizens in Europe, but really all over the world. So it's a global agenda, a world agenda. And that means that both rich and poor countries were included in the program. And at the same time that the program was launched, there was also a document released, published, called Age-Friendly Cities, a guide. And this guidebook helps cities to become and be age-friendly. And 3 years after this launch, we saw another launch, namely of a global network of age-friendly cities and communities, which can actually sign up and become a member of this global network if they express the will to become age-friendly. By joining the network, you have a means to exchange data and best practices, and you can learn from one another. And what I like in particular is that our home cities of Wrocław and The Hague are both members.
Excellent. Excellent. Jacek, how long has Wrocław been a member?
Well, Wrocław joined the network in 2016, so it's quite a long time. Many other cities since that time joined this network as well. I think it's worth mentioning that we are working in one of European projects, City & Co, where we have 4 cities. The Hague from the Netherlands, Wrocław from Poland, another Polish city, it's Krakow, and also Bucharest from Romania. And during our project, in fact, last year, Krakow also joined this network.
Excellent.
And about the network, there are more than 1,500 cities and communities and even entire countries that have signed up for this global age-friendly agenda, which is quite an achievement because the network only exists now for 14 years. So I think it's a great achievement.
Yeah, that's a large number. Did you say 1,500?
Yeah, so 1,500. Yeah.
That is true. And would you say that, we're now live in the world of information where we can see statistics all the time. And I find, left, right, and center information about maybe not how fast, but I think for me, I guess it's fairly fast. The societies are aging, and especially in Europe. So maybe a few years back, it was, 1/5. So one out of 5 persons, one was over the age of 60, let's say. And now I think I just recently read about Wrocław, that is 1 in 4. So would you say that because of that, the research is needed in the context of, making cities more age-friendly for all of us, really?
I would say both. Like, one thing is that the share of older people is growing, but the second quite important thing is that characteristics of these people is changing, because I think we will all agree that older people right now, people who are, let's say, 70 at the moment, they have slightly different profile, different rhythm of the day. If we compare it to future 70 years old people who will, maybe they grow up in other conditions. They are, for instance, more familiar with IT solutions. So there's a huge change. So there definitely is a need to update, not only based on the fact that this population is growing in numbers and in relative share of the society, but also that these are just different people.
Right. Okay. And if I asked you to give me some practical examples, so let's say you told me The Hague, of course, is like leading city in the movement. Then Wrocław's also a member. Krakow has recently joined the age-friendly city network. So how practically, for example, the fact that in Wrocław I can get on quite modern trams and they have this low floor, and so I can see that people in wheelchairs have no problems getting on them. Is that like something like this practical aspect of a city being age-friendly?
Could well be, yes. And don't get me wrong, but age-friendly not only refers to old age, but to people from all cohorts, so from all age groups. So what is good for older people is often also good for people with a disability, or even young mothers with a pram, with a baby in there. But it's a good example, and if you extrapolate this solution of accessible trams, you could actually also change the platform to make it more level access. You could do something in terms of affordability of your public transportation or the frequency of public transportation, that you for sure can reach a hospital with a tram or a bus, or that you can go to a GP or a
GP, that's the general doctor, yes, primary care.
Yeah, or any kind of health service. It's also about the accessibility of buildings like a shopping mall. And everything seems to be rather interconnected. And that's why I always call for multiple disciplines to work together in this field, so that we can get a broad scope of solutions inside. And by joining up all of these solutions, we can turn our cities into a truly age-friendly city. And what I would like to stress, and we didn't touch upon it in your previous question, we now have 1,500 cities, and all of the levels of development, of course, are different because some have more experience, some cities are richer than others, have different types of people living there. But in the end, I think it's a wonderful achievement that we have 1,500 active cities from a movement that was not just born out of an idea that was conceived by the WHO, but by a movement that came from America years before, but it was still called the Elderly Friendly Society. So it actually moved away from old age alone to a more broader perspective, or a broader view on what society should be like, also in terms of inclusivity, that we are an inclusive and diverse society in many ways.
And in fact, you just really nicely described something that in urban design is called universal design.
So what is that?
Because Joost mentioned that by adapting urban space and making it convenient for older people, at the same time, the same solutions are just convenient for all our users. So in the concept of universal design, we just search for the most vulnerable groups, what are their needs, and so on. So just by adjusting the city, tuning it to the needs of those who have the highest requirements. At the same time, it's just maybe it's not technically required, but very convenient for others as well.
I think I have a good example from The Hague. The Hague is partly built on former sea dunes, like the dunes along the coast. So it's sandy soil that's stable. And half of the city is built on marshland, so it's sinking away. That means that the streets and the pavements on which you walk have become really unstable and uneven because the soil and the ground is literally sinking away. So the pavement is uneven, and then we say it might be dangerous for older people so they can tip over. But guess what? I fall once in a while because of uneven streets as well. So if they fix the streets for older people, it also benefits me, people in wheelchairs, people with prams, and people like me or some others who simply don't pay attention to the quality of the pavement.
That's a very good example, actually. Except for those, for me, in the last few years in Wrocław. I think those trams and the availability of the really modern ones, that is something that's really noticeable. Is there anything else, Jacek, that maybe is worth mentioning here in the context of Wrocław and their commitment to the age-friendly agenda?
Yeah, probably there are many different aspects, but probably coming from this urban studies, I would focus on recreation and urban greenery. So again, that's something that we will probably mention as a very convenient solution, having a relatively equally distributed green areas across the city, so that everyone can have an access to have this daily physical activity. And again, it's universal solution because not only older people will use it, but something that changes over time. In previous years, even when we look back, that's something probably that we both remember before this socio-political changes in Poland. It was more common that we had more public toilets across the city. Then, because of economic shortages and costs related to them, they were getting closed, and right now there is a big change. And for instance, there is a huge investment in creating public toilets next to areas that are supposed to invite also older people to spend time, to be active, and so on. Because very often, with some of solutions, I think it's important to highlight that it's not necessarily the case that every solution would be used by every person. But very often, it's just the question is it an option to use it? So, for instance, in case of older person, sometimes it is considered as a barrier. I would love to go for a walk, but during a long walk, maybe I would need to use the toilet. And if there is a space where I know that there is no option to use it, then I'm resigning from this activity. So just by building this awareness that no worries, this space is well designed and you can really fit there well, you can fulfill all your needs. That's also very inviting to go outside of home and like being physically active, but also socializing with others.
That's true. And I think this is what I would like to talk about now for a second, is that socializing aspect, because I think we know that a sort of problem with older persons is sometimes that they're not really happy to leave the house. That could be a very simple reason. I'm not sure if it's safe for me to be outside because I don't know where the next toilet is. And that could be a big problem for some of them. Other people, I guess, that they just sort of feel quite shy anyway. Maybe they even were shy in their prime. And so how do we go about persuading them that's actually that social interaction is helpful and is kind of contributing to their well-being, basically? How do you get them to leave the home without maybe putting this toilet presence as a priority?
Well, I think there's a couple of things you need to address here. First of all, you often hear that we have a loneliness crisis because people don't engage with one another, don't go out. But I'm not sure if this is a problem that is only faced by older people. Maybe it's a sign of the times. Then again, when you grow old, you also tend to lose people around you. So your parents die first, your brothers and sisters, some of your friends, the people you know, your colleagues. People tend to die. That means that your social network becomes smaller and smaller. And when you age physically, you may actually end up with mobility problems. So you start to walk with a stick or a walker or with a wheeled walker. And that also means that your mobility is hampered and your action radius becomes smaller. So you don't go out for hundreds of kilometers. You need to have a social network around you. And if you add all these aspects up, and maybe here in Poland, you may have children who have moved abroad for a career, so you also lose out on your family.
Yes.
So if you add it all up, older people are at a greater risk of having a smaller network, and they simply don't know or don't have the means or were never trained or informed on how to expand that network. And it is important to engage with others because it keeps you physically fit, mentally fit, and up to date with the current society, so to say. So that is something that I like to stimulate in The Hague, that people redevelop a social network, that we have more intergenerational aspects or elements, that older people try to mingle with younger cohorts because they will be around for much longer.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many benefits, but it's not the old age per se, but it is the side effects of aging that hamper and impact your the social network around you. And this is something our governments on the city level, national level need to stress more, that it's not about talking about the problem, it's talking about solutions and reaching out with solutions to older people so that they can still adapt, cope, and redevelop, and then have a better quality of life.
And do you find that there's something specifically, to do local authorities in the Netherlands? Do they do something? How do they reach these older communities? Is it through maybe doctor networks or, I don't know, day centers?
Well, that's a very good point. We do have some sort of day centers, let's call them living rooms in the community, with a rather low threshold. So you can come there to have a coffee, to do some games, maybe to do yoga classes, baking classes, cooking activities. You have a plethora of solutions and activities that are being offered, but it's not everyone's cup of tea, and a lot of people experience some form of shame. So what the city level government did is, you can come and this weekend, and we can help you with filling out tax forms, or we can help you apply for benefits in terms of, we had something like an energy relief program in the last couple of years.
That means they get a subsidy, I suppose, towards
subsidy
their energy bills.
for the staggeringly high energy bills. And then when there is a financial incentive, people are more inclined to come visit. And once you talk to them, there will always be a social worker around to just have a little conversation, a little chat, and invite them to come back the week after just for a coffee. So you need to invite these people like they are your guests and try to grasp them, but not treat them as a patient or someone who is in need of solutions for potential problems which may not be.
That's true.
Joost quite nicely distinguished, let's say, the starting point, that in the US everything started with elderly, and then with the time it converted into age-friendly, opening to more generations. And that's also one of the, let's say, stigmatizing aspects, because if in some of the forms of these community centers, let's say you run a pottery workshop for older people, then okay, it's always a question, is it an offer also for me? Would I feel they're fine? Wouldn't others look at me in a strange way? Maybe instead of pottery workshop for older people, it should be just a pottery workshop for others. Also to build these connections and intergeneration, so that they have younger friends as well. So yeah, this offer very often made by cities. It's one thing, but the other thing that I would like to mention, it's a case that we had in Wrocław. We have because it's infrastructural solution.
Mm-hmm.
The company owned by a city, social housing association, decided that they will build a house. Like initially, they thought about older people, but they didn't decide to build whole building only for older people, but they decided let's go to do it in intergeneration approach. So half of the apartments are for older people, and half of them are for regular citizens. And like I did one of my research in this building. I had surveys and focus groups with people from this building, and surprisingly, like conclusions from older people is one thing, but conclusions from these younger people who live there. They said that at the moment when they were deciding if they want to move there or not, like what was your relation to the fact that half of your neighbors would be older people? So some of them said it was neutral, absolutely no impact on me. And after 2 years of living together, some of them they said, right now I can see some benefits that I didn't consider before, because it's a different kind of neighbors. They are not noisy. They are not having parties till late. So it's a different set. Very often when we talk about later these connections, I wouldn't say that it's absolutely common, but there were some cases where like this older person decided that, okay, no worries, I can take care of your child and you can go do groceries and so on. And meanwhile, you don't have to worry about your child. I can take a look at her. So that was a case where with the time, people really find some benefits of just, let's say, splitting their lives with lives of older people.
So I guess maybe there should be more of those kind of, developments, yes? These blocks where people could be living next to the elderly neighbors. Sadly, I live in an area that was, for example, really kind of marketed towards young people. And I have to say, this is very strange, but I really don't see any older people in my immediate environment. It's very weird. So I'm jealous, that those guys have those elderly neighbors. Well, that's very nice.
In fact, that was the case for years. Very often when a new neighborhood was developed, usually young families were moving in. And what's the problem if most of the citizens of one neighborhood are in the same cohort? That at the same time, you will need kindergarten. So at this, more or less in a similar time, these families will have really young kids. Then a few years later, everyone will be in need of primary school, then secondary school, and in 20 years from the moment when they move in, like this school would remain empty. Because we don't have, if that's what happens if we have homogeneous profile of a society. And it's also easier for City Hall to manage the city if these generations are mixed.
But can somehow the City Hall influence the investors? Because, the City Hall, as far as I understand, they build a small percentage of housing or residential homes that are sold to people on a daily basis. So I don't see how, or at least for now, perhaps, this is something you're working on, and then as a next step of this City & Co project or another project you're involved in, you will make a recommendation. I don't know. But maybe I'm just hoping that maybe either of you could have a vision of how we could influence those, those intergenerational neighborhoods, taking into account that buying a property is expensive, and I'm sure this is true for both The Hague and Wrocław.
For me, it's easy because I also work as a board member with a social housing association in the country, and we call upon municipalities and the mayors to tell developers that they need to do a mixed-use building. So not just for expats or young people or for families, but that they need to include, let's say, 20 or 50 housing units for older people or people with a mobility impairment or disability. So you can actually influence the neighborhood population by being good at commissioning. Like that the municipality tells you what type of people need to be living in a new construction. So you can diversify your population through these steering instruments in the Netherlands, and it's quite successful. I must say that we don't have these homogeneous neighborhoods. It's all fairly mixed. And if I look at myself, I live next door to mine is where I live. That we have an apartment block full of older people, and I hang out with a couple of them. They're all in the late 70s, early 80s. Okay, they're all highly educated and they have good positions, but we meet occasionally for drinks and we have great fun together. And I don't really see them as people who are 80 years old. I just see them as a good nice company indeed, with whom you can have a very good and nice and interesting conversation. And sometimes, of course, there is a seniority because they have more life experience and they can actually talk to me like a mother or a father and tell me what to do. But that's actually the fun of hanging out with people who are much older.
Yeah, I think that's something that we as academics got used to quicker than others, because when I look at my friends, my colleagues who studied with me, very often, like many of them ended up in these kinds of jobs where most of their colleagues from work are in the same group. In academia, it was not the case. When I started working when I was 24, I had friends from work, colleagues who were 60, 65. So it was a quick lesson that this age is not really a big barrier. And exactly the thing that Joost mentioned about this allocation of people around the city. Well, also in Polish system, we have master planning, spatial planning documents. It's always a question how brave local governments are, what they want to put into these master plans. Because if they want to be like really open for developers, then they don't put too many requirements on a development. And if they start really using tools that like the state gives this power, it's always a matter if a municipality wants to use it or not.
Yeah. Oh, I wanna expand on that because then it's time for some political activism. But I think we should put an end to politicians who are just tokenistic and just say, yes, it's important to have homes for older people. Oh, yes, it's important to have a school.
And then they do nothing.
And they do nothing. They should put their money where their mouth is and act accordingly. And yes, I know that plots of land will be less interesting for many developers if you put additional barriers and additional requirements into the zoning permit or in the planning permit. But it is something we need to do in order to have a better quality of the built environment. And if you have these segregated neighborhoods instead of mixed purpose areas, it's actually of a poorer quality. So it may be easier to build a uniformal product, like one house. It's all repetitive. That's cheaper, but it represents less value on the market. So I think our politicians should be more daring, more bold, and just say, yes, we are going to build more for older people, perhaps next to family homes, and we're just going to do it. It's a requirement, and else you don't get the permit to construct.
I like that. I hope some politicians are listening right now, or maybe they'll tune in to the YouTube transmission. We have the election coming up, as I'm sure Jacek must have said. And I don't know if the any kind of, older groups, I don't think they featured much in the
Okay, older
in the
people are
policies.
voters too. Older people are voters too. So you can get votes by catering for their needs. That's
true.
a message I want to share with all politicians. They are just 30%, no more. If you have 30% of your population being old
25,
age.
I think we've got more or less.
Yeah, 25. But then it's more potential voters because people till the age of 18 cannot go to the polls. So you can exclude them. So it means you have an even higher share of older voters. So politicians should really listen to the voices of older people because they do matter and they can actually bring you victory.
And in fact, when it comes to younger generations, those who have a right to vote, also the first round of our local elections
2 weeks ago, I think it was?
Less than 2 weeks ago, showed that, again, unfortunately, their participation in election is way lower. So older generations are those who really take part in the election, actively decide about the future of a city. I really think, and you ask if it's really like this point of older people, it's a top point of the agenda. Well, the problem is that very often politicians prepare a list of points, which we can say more or less it's unique. In almost every country, in every city, you can say that we have to focus on transport, especially public transport. We have to focus on air quality and so on. And then you have a more or less universal list. And usually somewhere there is a point about older generations as well. But then the problem is if you move forward from slogan to details, very often they have no idea what's really needed. For instance...
well, hold on a second. They have no idea, the politicians or the older people?
Politicians very often have no idea what's really needed. Very often, like the typical approach is that, we have to support older people, for instance, in order to adjust their homes to their needs, to needs of older people. But that's one of the findings of our City & Co projects. That's surprisingly from all domains from WHO. In fact, housing was evaluated as a top among all older people. In fact, in all
the highest scores,
the highest scores in all countries that take part in our research, and in fact, outdoor spaces is evaluated definitely lower. So it's not that like from a perspective of older people, it's not that you need additional amendments inside your household, but they refer more into the needs in outdoor space.
And how do you make sure that the real needs of older people are listened to, are analyzed? I remember we've talked a little bit about what you've been doing in the City & Co project. And as far as I remember, the idea there is that you want to hear it from the horse's mouth, as they say. You want to hear it from the older people themselves. What is it that they need? What is it that they would like to see changed in their immediate environments? So how do they provide you with data, Yash? Oh, for both of you. How do they provide the project with important data?
Well, we analyze these needs on different levels by different tools, but maybe I will start with something that we are developing within our projects. That's more geoinformation based tool. So we developed a data collector for older people so that they have to simplify, they have an app on the phone, they can go outside, just look around, take a picture of something that like they assess both positive or negative, depending what they would like to share. And then they can create a base of things that, what are our problems, not the things that people from City Hall consider as a problems of older people, but really older people consider, okay, that's problematic for me. And then together with this picture, they add some description, what's really a problem and so on. But on the other hand, they can also share with us some positive aspects. What is a good strategy, good solution that would be really convenient for them to implement in other parts of the city. So that's this technological way how we want to support and co-create this agenda of developing the city.
This is nice. I like that.
You mentioned in the introduction that I'm the chairperson of the Age-Friendly The Hague Knowledge Platform. And in this knowledge platform, we have a wide range of methodologies to assess the age-friendliness of the city. And based on the results of these assessments, we provide data to the policymakers in the town hall. And based on these data, they can come up with policies and action plans. And one of the tools we developed is the Age-Friendly Cities and Communities questionnaire that we use on a biannual basis to measure the age-friendliness of The Hague. And we listen to the voices of older people, and they give us their opinions and their scores. And based on these results, we work together with the Urban Committee for Senior Citizens or Older Citizens, and they, based on their position as an organization that can provide recommendations, write a set of recommendations for policies, and together we present the raw data. The older people present the recommendations on behalf of the older people in The Hague, and then the minister at the municipal level plus the politicians and policymakers actually listen and act upon these recommendations. And I've seen quite a couple of things from the surveys and the survey data back in the new political programs, in the coalition agreement, and so on. So it's not just tokenistic research from that perspective. No, it leads to concrete actions which actually benefit the older citizens in the city. And this tool that we developed is now going, I wouldn't say viral, but it's going global. And we have a version almost available for Poland, so that the Polish cities can also do an evaluation. Romania is done, and we have multiple countries in Europe and beyond, including Japan, where we now have a local version of the Dutch survey. And I think it's really important to have a good survey to do a baseline assessment, but also follow-up research, that we can actually, through the global network, can learn from one another, because the survey instrument allows for comparisons of data between all these cities. And that's why I like the fact that both Wrocław and Kraków now have the same data, and that we can finally compare the age-friendliness of these two cities with my hometown in The Hague. And I think it's just a great leap forward for science and also for policymakers, that we can actually learn from one another, because Poland has really a lot to offer to the Netherlands from that perspective.
How so? I mean, okay, we're different, I suppose, culturally, but do you think that somewhat the position of older generations is different in Poland than in the Netherlands?
Definitely different, because the Dutch have a savings-based culture. So we have the largest pension fund in the world with I think it was 1,500 billion euros worth of savings. So everybody is saving for their futures. In Poland, it's a different system of retirement funds and pension funds. And in the Netherlands, there's always this attitude of just open a wallet full of money, spend the cash, and then everything will be solved in the end. And in Poland, I think people think better before spending money. So often resources are better thought through, mainly because of a lack of funding sometimes. Mm-hmm. So I think the Dutch can learn from spending their money more wisely and only to allocate budget to the things that really matter. And last week when we were both in Krakow, we saw some information and activity centers, and I was actually inspired by some of the things I thought I saw. So like the activities going on, art classes was really nice, but also the way information was supplied in a senior information center. But really all the information about the city was available. And I think the information is more available in Krakow than back in The Hague. So I was looking at it with a little bit of envy. Not jealousy, but envy. Like we should have the same information available in my city as well.
That's why during our project we have our mutual learning visits. So we have our time for research dogs, but also we have our investigations across the city to understand how the system works, how we can improve our own back home based on these ideas. So yeah, that's what we are sharing.
So Joost has found something about Krakow that's inspiring, and that the way the information was displayed for everyone is kind of a cause for envy. And what did you see in The Hague that you think could be implemented here in Wrocław?
Well, there is one thing that, to be honest, at the beginning I was surprised, and I'm not sure if considering different social backgrounds, this approach would work in Poland in the same way. But in case of Polish daycare centers, very often the offer is well organized. So at 10 you have this workshop, at 11 you have another thing, and so on. It's more like organized
it's a program. It's a full-on program kind of thing.
And
yes.
I do remember that there was this case when we visited a daycare center in The Hague. It was more like we offer a space, and it's up to you what's going to happen there. So it's additionally a good element that boosts someone is not only a receiver of the offer, but is also a partner of, okay, let's take this board game, let's play together. Or there was also, I still remember this case of immigrants who live in The Hague. So there were also, let's say, classes of Dutch language, but not like regular classes. Now we need to do these 2 chapters and so on. Like, okay, maybe it will be a 15 minutes talk, or maybe we'll have a bit more time. So it was more unstructured, more flexible offer. So that was something that was quite surprising for me.
Right. Maybe we like a little bit of order. I don't know. I'm just thinking this could be something, a completely different domain. Maybe an anthropologist will share a light on that. Now, guys, aside from the 4 cities that participate in the City & Co project, are there places in the world, in this huge network of 1,500 cities that showed that commitment to age-friendly, to the age-friendly idea? Are there some cities that you particularly like, that you maybe visited and saw that they are in fact friendly for everyone there, including older citizens?
Well, how much time do you have?
Well, I don't know. Could you make it very brief?
No, I know what you're trying to say. Honestly, there's 2 directions that we can go into. You see, there's a lot of media coverage for American British cities because they, of course, speak English, so it's easy to transfer their experiences onto towards the international media. But frankly, I don't think their cities are so fantastic. Having said that, I'd rather look to the south. So we have a couple of cities in Spain and Portugal. Spain is extremely active in this field. They have a lot of outdoor life, a lot of outdoor activities, and of course they have great food.
Great weather.
Great weather. Can be too hot, but there are things we can enjoy from and learn and experience ourselves when we are there as a tourist. That you see a lot of older people on the streets playing board games, having a chat, just keeping an eye out on one another. And that whole sense of community is something that I feel attracted to. Then you have some cities in Asia, let's say Hong Kong, which I like. Hong Kong is extremely densely built up place. But what they do in their age-friendly policies is stress family-friendly solutions. That could be something that resonates with the Polish people. And also the financial aspects. So they have particular attention for finance. And of course, I have a lot of experience with Australian cities. So Adelaide is one of the cities I like to visit. And they are just very active in Australia. There's also the outdoor life, but the culture is more related to the Dutch one, to be honest. Very North Sea-like, so to say, Northern European, with a government that is there to help, and a lot of activity centers, a lot of facilities. And especially what I like about Australia, the public toilets. I cannot stress it too often, just like Jacek did. There are toilets everywhere. So you can go out for a beer and you won't have problems.
How great. That is really a heaven for beer drinkers, isn't it? Of all ages, I suppose.
Or tea and coffee. Anything will do.
And when Joost mentioned this Asian perspective of family approach, I think it's also very important because to rethink what family perspective do we have? Because very often, even in the Polish system, we have this card of a big family. And this family refers to parents and number of kids. And talking about family, also huge family, it's also changing a perspective into this intergeneration perception of family, that grandparents are also considered somewhere in this structure. Because when we speak in Poland about this big family, it's something complete, like we are completely missing this aspect of a role of grandparents in this scheme.
Interesting. I think in the past, maybe that role was more prominent, and I think people relied a lot. So I remember when I went to primary school, not everyone had most of us would go to the kindergarten before. So we had some experience of, socializing in children's groups. But I remember maybe 10% of my class, they've never done that. They were looked after by their grandparents. And so for them, it was a little difficult to adjust, to that kind of group. And I remember, our teacher would sort of talk about also to parents and say to one group, "Don't stress. I have a way. Those guys will adjust soon." But kind of asking the other parents to understand this. So I think that wasn't so long ago. But then a lot of things changed. And I think Joost mentioned that a lot of Polish younger people went abroad. And so now this network is it's cut, because you have what you said, the immediate family, the parents and children, let's say, living in the UK, and then all the grandparents are left in Poland. So
but I would like to stress one thing, that by including also older generations in this wider perspective of family, I don't mean that they all have to take care of grandkids all the time. So
sure.
It's just, of course, if they want, it's fine. But many of them, maybe they are just so occupied and their agenda is too busy because they want to go for Nordic walking. Then they meet with some friends. They have some, I don't know, meetings at the university of the third age.
They have the classes.
Then they go to the cinema and so on. So it doesn't mean that the role of older people in this wider perspective of family is just to take care of kids, but there has to be a place somewhere in this structure.
Well, I would say it's about giving people a sense of purpose in life, whether it's taking care of kids or just having a hobby that keeps you going. You need to have a reason why you want to wake up in the morning.
Yeah, and that reminds me something that probably it's quite controversial, but yeah, it exists in the literature as well. The so-called blue zones around the globe.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's in Japan, it's Greece, part of Italy, also in Latin America. These are the zones where the share of people 100 years and over is significantly higher comparing to other parts of the world. And there were studies analyzing what are the key factors, what's so different there so that people really live longer. And of course, there were the main four domains around food, around activity, and one of them was around purpose of life. Exactly, it can be connected directly with a family. It can be connected with a community which is not our family. In some cases, it can be just active participation in volunteering. But at least in some way, they really have a goal to take part in the social life.
Right, but do people only in blue zones have that purpose? I imagine.
No. It's not that. It was rather the concept, okay, what's happening there and which ideas could we, let's say, copy?
We could implement
from these
outside those zones.
And do it elsewhere. I'm not saying that moving to blue zones is a solution.
No, it's not a solution at all. It's mainly boring islands where you don't want to live. If you're used to city life, and I'm very critical of this movement. There's been some critical writing about this, that it's more about marketing than science, the whole Blue Zones movement. You can even buy your own Blue Zones recipe book. So there's a business model behind this. And I think that the evidence base is so-so to keep it positive. Okay. Would you really like to age on a Greek island, the small Greek island without any facilities, and then you may develop a disease and you can't even be treated on the island? True. You need to be flown out. So I'm quite skeptical. This is good for people who were born and raised on such islands, but not for the greater populations of other places.
And plus, as you said, that these islands, that slightly different environment to what we're talking about. We're trying to sort of figure out here what's the way forward with the cities, where we have, I think, the majority of people live in cities. So I guess that's why the evolution and kind of proper planning is so important. Now, do you think new technologies will have some kind of role, a bigger role than they already have in this aspect, in making the city even more age-friendly?
Yes and no. Well, first of all, the original global guide of the WHO was not really technology inclusive. So there's been very little mentioning of technology. But we know, especially after the COVID virus pandemic, that technology is so important to keep people connected. So through Teams, Zoom, WhatsApp, you can do a Skype call with your grandchildren. That's technology that wasn't around 20 years ago. Online banking, ordering groceries. A lot of older people do it, at least in my country, partly because they have no other options because all the bank offices have closed. But technology is so important to stay connected, to have access to information. And we simply can't stress enough the importance of technology. And I often joke to medical doctors and to gerontologists that the current old age that many of us are going to experience ourselves is actually not due to the successes of medical doctors, but to the successes primarily of engineers, because where would we be without sewage systems, without proper housing and shelter? It was the engineers that took care of the first aging boom in our societies. So that's why we need to close the circle and now pay more attention to the digitalization of our environments and what that can actually mean to aging well.
Yes, but I always worry, that this is probably me, not being as familiar with this topic as you, but I see, for example, that people who are 60 years old now and more, not all of them are so competent, or so comfortable with all these, technologies. So there's definitely still a group who really struggled during COVID with the fact that everything was closed and they could do only their online banking, or they could, I don't know, maybe order groceries online. They were being frustrated, I think. So maybe this is a question for Jacek a little bit more. Yeah. Are we doing something here in Poland to actually prevent this kind of digital exclusion and make sure that, people, especially older generation, feel more comfortable with the technology?
Mm-hmm. One thing is that we do have activities around it. Also via this University of the Third Age, it's quite common. One of the most typical classes are IT classes.
All right.
So that's one thing. But I think that your question slightly overlaps with something that we discussed in the beginning. Why do we need to do research in context of urban aging? And we also mentioned the fact that current generation of older people is going to be different than generation of older people in 10 years, in 20 years from now. So in the future, it shouldn't be such a big problem, because we will have more and more people who got used to these solutions, these devices. They were using it on a regular basis in the previous stages of their lives.
Mm-hmm, that's true. I think, that this, let's say, when we will be that age, I think at least the issues with online banking and so on.
Well, but technology is becoming ever more, what is the exact word? Intuitive. Mm-hmm. So it's becoming easier and easier over the years to work with all these new applications and services. It's not that you have to put in a floppy disk inside the computer like a long time, and number 2 and 3 and 4. You have automatic downloads of your software updates. You take a facial scan instead of you having to insert a PIN number or a PIN code. Mm-hmm. It's becoming so user-friendly that even a lot of older people use it. And if I look at the Netherlands, there's only this cohort of 80, 85 and over that may struggle a bit. But if I look at my aunts, they are in their 80s. And they were not very technology savvy, but they know how to use WhatsApp and online banking, and it's not an issue at all. It's also the way society develops, and if you have bank offices that close down, if you can't apply for a passport at a desk at the town hall, but everything needs to be done through a digital identification and so on, you have no options than to go with the flow. And a lot of older people actually do it, and they are perfectly fine with it, except for this small group. But honestly, I think they are slowly dying out. And you can't stop modernization of your society. You can, on the other hand, help older peoples to cope and to give them some proper form of training.
So I guess in our case, those, again, thumbs up for the University of Third Age courses, because, I think there still are people who are not all that confident with applications and mobile phones and so on. Perhaps this shows the difference between, our two countries.
I think there are some, but that reminds me one thing that we heard yesterday in Krakow during our meeting. They were referring to one older lady. And they were, in fact, the whole discussion was about physical activity. Let's go. Do you have a time to go outside and so on? And the response was, "Yeah, of course, I have to go out. How long can I just sit and scroll Facebook?"
Yeah. Wow.
That was her, and it was not a question about do you use social media. Mm-hmm.
Well, my aunt, for example, can't send an SMS, and she's not even 60. So I don't know how she's survived. I know her husband does everything, but I'm thinking if this husband dies first, she will be in a pickle, I
well,
think.
honestly, you are talking about a woman, and women are at more risk of financial losses also after the death of a spouse. And if you are a truly good member of your family, really tell her, perhaps in private, that she really should take over some of these tasks, because women have a higher risk of losing their husbands than the other way around. And if she outsurvives him, she's in trouble. She needs to start learning things, also become financially independent, know about the banking details and all of these, know well the paperwork is, how much you've registered with a notary and so on. Women, older women, this is really important from a social work perspective, need to become more independent of their husbands, and you should have like a co-working relationship and not be dependent on the husband too often, because the chances of you being in peril after losing your spouse is really, really large and really substantial and significant. So I stress that really often to older women. Even I did it with my own mother. Like, you can't rely on dad. You need to do things on your own, and she did.
Right.
It often takes persuasion from the children, I must admit.
That's true. And what do you think about this? Maybe it's sci-fi, but maybe it will come in the next few years. It will be a reality. Robot companions, kind of, I don't know, nice robots looking like dogs or cats that the older people could maybe keep, so that, to combat loneliness. I've seen some prototypes in one of the YouTube channels that's dedicated to AI and robotics. But am I right in thinking that this is still a faraway future?
Well, personally, I'm not convinced, but it doesn't come from a research, because I was not focusing on that aspect. But again, similarly as also other IT solutions are accepted by different societies at a different level, I can imagine that these robots can be accepted differently again in different societies. Somehow, not based on my research, but based also mostly on some focus groups and other discussions that I have with older people. It never came out like a topic that they are interested, that they are searching for. So, but based on my knowledge,
A lot of technology push from some engineers who like to put on a social face, so to say, and just pretend like it's going to add a lot. I think the world would be a very sad place if we have older people sitting in a home with a digital companion. It reminds me of these horrible sci-fi novels, not 1984, but more like Brave New World. Horrible, truly horrible. I would rather people get a new cat and share it maybe with another neighbor, like a co-cat, but like a real cat. And I do know we have these companion cats for people with very severe dementia. It's like a cat robot. But then again, these are very hard to clean sometimes because you can't push these robots into the washing machine. And yeah, I'm very skeptical. I've seen a lot of positives and negatives coming out in the scientific literature, but personally, I don't think this should be the way to move forward, the direction into which to move with the society. And very honestly, there's one option that I see, two options that I see as a potential solution, which are the exoskeletons for people who have neural disabilities and cannot walk, but are totally reliant on wheelchairs, maybe because they have a paralysis. And then by putting on some exterior skeleton, so to say, they may be able to walk. And the other thing this is Poland, I will keep it shortly, could be the sex robots, like sex entertainment robots, because then you're not reliant on a real person.
Maybe, yeah. I'm glad you said this is Poland, and let's be cautious about that. Now, how optimistic are you both about, the perspectives for your own old age? Do you think that with everything that we've said today, with the fact that the network is so large, that people are willing to learn from each other, share experiences, especially that you've managed to get especially the current older generation members on board, so the whole idea can be understood a lot better. So how do you feel about, your own future in that? Shall we expect maybe a much nicer later years for us due to all these achievements that have already been done in the field of aging?
I'm quite optimistic. I would say that considering that many things are diagnosed already, and it's already under the scope of many boards. They really monitor and analyze what's needed. I think that all changes, modifications in urban space, it's one thing more, let's say, infrastructural part, but also in terms of public services and creating conditions for this social connections would give us a better future to age if we are interested. It's like a candy shop. You have like a huge offer, and it's up to you what you will pick from the shelf. So I think that I'm quite optimistic that we will deliver a better city to age, but it's up to everyone if they are going to use this opportunity and if their aging would be nice or not.
What about you?
I'm less optimistic, to be honest, from multiple perspectives. First of all, it's a financial one. There's going to be less money available for aged care. So if you are aging healthily, it's okay. But what happens if you're in need of care? There's hardly any nurses or other healthcare professionals left to help you out. You simply got to fend for yourself. And you need money to find solutions outside of the system. And I'm just not sure about the stability of the Dutch retirement scheme. So I keep all of my options open. I would be very, very unhappy if I were to rely solely on technological options and solutions. And for me, quality of life is most important. So as long as I can keep working till old age, I'll be satisfied. But the moment I have to retire, and it may be the age of 75, then would I still have a purpose in life? I simply don't know. Maybe travel a bit, but you can only travel if you feel healthy, if you are healthy and can still walk around. So I just hope that I can keep my job for as long as possible and stay productive, and that would give me a sense of purpose.
That's excellent. So what do you think will be the takeaway for people who have stayed with us, stayed the course with us? I guess that purpose. Let's remember for everybody else that it's all about kind of having something to do, and staying healthy for as long as we can. I suppose that is what people can do for themselves.
And one more thing: if you are a married couple, God bless you, but try to be more independent, because there will be a day when you're going to be by yourself. So don't be too over-reliant on your spouse, and also develop a network outside of your core family, because there may be life events like the loss of a partner or your children moving out of Poland to another place in this world. And then you need to have a backup plan, like real good friends that can also support you up to old age and be, a great source of fun, relief, laughter, and enjoyment in life.
And probably one thing I would add as well, just there's relatively huge offer of things that older people can do. So info to take from this discussion would be just to please have a look what your own city offers. And of course, it's not like you have to go with everything, but choose these elements that suit you the most and just use this opportunity.
Thank you very much. This was very informative, and it was a joy to have you. Thank you. And everybody else, I would like to invite to the next podcast, which will be happening probably quite soon. Thank you. Goodbye.